Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6:30 p.m. on November 26. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of the Yakutat Nucleate First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. Before I call the meeting to order, would encourage everybody to participate tomorrow evening in our emergency services holiday food drive between 4:30 and 8 p.m. With the items collected benefiting our Salvation Army Food Bank. And on a related note, the Salvation Army is looking for volunteers for the Christmas kettles up to and through the Christmas season. So I would encourage folks to participate in that. I've volunteered myself for a couple of shifts, and I certainly enjoy it every year. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a mover and a seconder that the agenda of the November 26, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And now I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 12th, 2024 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now invite the public in attendance, which there are none, or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I'll look to Ms. Rhodes if there's anybody online who's indicated they'd like to speak. And seeing none, we'll move on to the next staff recommendation and ask for a mover and a seconder that council enter into committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Artie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. We're now in committee of the whole. And the first item of business, item 6.1, financial information for the period ending September 30th, 2024. A report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Burdett. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Hello, Council. Just a few slides to accompany the content in your report tonight, this evening. These next two slides are becoming pretty standard for these updates. I've got our five major expense categories that I'll show, and which together make up around 70% of our total operating expenses for the year. These slides are kind of attempting to show our current inflationary pressures using the last 24 months of data to the end of September, starting with insurance. October 22 to September 23, this went up 45.5%. And in this most recent year, only went up 12.3%, and 12.3 obviously still high, but at least it's not 45 again. So it's trending in the right direction. Fuel has been dropping a bit, mainly because the price of fuel is lower than it was 1 year ago and 2 years ago. Utilities went down in 2023 and just up a little bit most recently in 24. And reason for the decrease, if council remembers, is largely because of the switch to LED streetlights in mid-2022, and now costs have remained fairly steady since then. Wages and overtime, fairly flat increases here, as most of this is tied to pre-existing contractual agreements. Benefits, however, a little higher. Benefit providers of all types have had their costs increase, and also overall usage is up since COVID, which results in higher premiums for the city. We are seeing those increases get slightly lower, which is encouraging for the future. And staff Again, would like to confirm that there are no anomalous items to bring to council's attention at this point. Happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Questions from council? Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. CFO, can you remind me like what portion of our operating expense is wages and fuel? In fact, all of those items that we just listed here, what portion of them are, what are they portion of operating expenses?
Thanks, Councillor Ramadas. So the five of those, as I said, make up about 70. Wages and benefits are about 55% combined. So I don't know the other four exact split off the top of my head, but those four would make up the other 15%. 55, yeah.
Other questions from council? I'm curious about the, forgive me, I'll find it in the report here. The fire department trending high because of overtime. And is that a challenge related to a lack of auxiliary firefighters, or is that a staffing issue? Can you shed some light on that for me, please?
Thanks, Mayor Mulligan. Part of it was we consciously reduced the budget in 2024 under the assumption that the recent staffing changes was going to help, and it did help a little bit, but not not as much as we were hoping. So I think part of it is just maybe a little aggressive budget in that line. And then in terms of auxiliaries, I don't know if the chief has anything to add to this particular line, but I would return that over to him.
Good evening, Council. Yeah, I don't think the auxiliary budget actually makes a big difference on cost altogether. Like the CFO said, a big part of it is to do with all calls and alarms, where we have to call back career staff. And then by contract, we have to pay them their overtime wages for going to alarms. And we don't know if it's gonna be a fire or not. So we have to go with that risk. So.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that clarification. Councilor Audie Kelly.
Chief, I should have caught you. The all calls are strictly like fire related, right? Not any, our highway emergency response isn't impacting our overtime, or is it?
That is somewhat correct. So this is how it works. If we have an MVI, for example, normally what we do is we have whatever staff are on shift, whether it's one or two. So 40% of the year we have one on shift, 60% of the year we have two on shift. If there is an MVI or a first responder or something that's not fire related, then what happens is we will just call out auxiliaries that are on duty or on call. They've got to do a certain amount of hours of on call. And so we generally have 81% of the time we have somebody on pager for the auxiliary ranks. And so they can come, they can go with the staff that are going to those MVIs. If it's larger or there's no one on pager on the auxiliary ranks, we have to call back cross shift. So if, for example, it's a daytime call, whoever the firefighter is on night shift will be called back to go on that call. So they're constantly on call. That is if auxiliary is not on pager. And it is getting harder and harder because we're down to 16 auxiliary firefighters, and we normally like to have like 25. So.
Thank you, Chief. That's helpful. Well, further?
Chief, are we allowed to bill the province for any of those MVI related overtime hours?
Yeah, so we do bill the province, and it generally works out to close to even with the money that we get with the amount of firefighters and vehicles that we take out there. It's pretty close.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
We move on to item 6.2, council dashboard and Q3 update, a report from our CAO, Mr. Boranowski.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a very brief presentation and mostly hoping to have some dialogue and appreciating if you have questions. We have all the department heads here to support some Q&A with Council. There we go. I'd like to go through an introduction, talk a little bit about the updates that were completed at Council direction, review the dashboards and reports very quickly, and then support the dialogue as noted. In terms of follow-up from the last presentation to Council, which was a Q2 update in June or July, I believe, June, we renumbered prioritization that had been a direction or request from Council. Working with the Director of Asset Management, added a score for status and color coding to make the dashboards and the lists easier to scan so you could identify both criticality or priority and scoring. We then or the Director of Asset Management then supported with developing some quick reference visual data that highlight A, all major projects and their status, and then B, Council's strategic plan initiatives. And there are a host of different slices for the data for discussion, and I realize it is a lot. We have a large data set now as a management tool also that allows us to quarterly look at this by department, look at this by criticality, and then that feeds these dashboards and lists. And so the dialogue I'm hoping to have is what needs to roll up to the very first page that you need to see, and which of these have value or have less value. When I go through the 2-pager guide for all of these appendix items, each one has a bit of value and a rationale and is interesting, but I want to make sure that we're providing just the right level of detail to support Council. So would appreciate some discussion there. Hopping into the dashboards, the first, and there will be an update provided to Council just to reflect this dashboard specifically, but it's the major project dashboard. Working from the data set, it provides a number of visuals about how many are active, how many are future, how many are completed, and then gives you a split as to how they're related to the strategic objectives and goals, and then by type and priority. And then separately, there's a slice that is just specific to the projects derived from the strategic plan, and it shows the CSP project status, whether they're completed or active or future, their alignment with objectives, and it gives some insight on the volume of projects by objective and goal, their priority, and how things are moving along, and then the balance of whether they're on track, delayed, or significantly delayed and facing some challenges. Then we get into, and this is the large volume of appendix items here, the number of lists in all intents, different slices of the data set. And so we have completed major projects. I think there's value in knowing what's been completed specifically under the mandate. Priority 1 projects focuses on the life, safety, and core services that are nearing completion. So those are the active projects that haven't been completed that are priority 1. Projects of concern and major challenges are those that are flagged as red dot significant challenge projects. And in the report, I note a few mitigation measures. Our plan going forward is to use this as a tool for check-in ongoing. How are our critical projects going? What steps do we have to take to mitigate delays or address challenges we're facing? Delayed critical projects. Those are priority 1 and 2 projects that have timelines that need updating or just facing delays, but not the same as the most critical projects. And then a large list, all active projects and all future projects. Then we move into CSP or Council Strategic Plan projects. We have the completed list, all active and future. This is just to emphasize specifically a view towards what is completed, underway, and planned for the Council Strategic Plan. Stepping in new for this quarter, we've added an initial view to a tracking tool that we're using for base KPIs. These are generally consistent with the quarterly KPIs you'll see at municipalities around our size or larger before you get up into a very, much more highly sophisticated organization where you'll have a data analysis team working on this. But they track what are the generally standard key performance metrics that we are already capturing and monitoring. And so our next step would be, our focus this quarter was to get into process and have the management team take ownership. And then moving forward, we'll look at how do we simplify this with charts and how do we apply design to it, because I recognize it's just tables right now. And then finally, and thank you to our corporate officer, we have an updated resolution package, which provides council resolutions broken down by department and business area. Significant streamlining has gone into here to remove the simple day-to-day items like bylaw readings, permits. This is focused on council direction and more strategic items. It's still a lot. We simply have a lot of resolutions. It's council, it's the way council does business, right? And so feedback as well on this, is it the right level of detail? Do you want to move it just to specific direction from council? Or do you want these large contract awards or large decisions also included as we bring this back quarter after quarter? In summary, it's a lot. There's a lot of data there, but I'm interested to hear your feedback or take comments on what we should look at rolling up for the front page or initial view on the council dashboard. What slices of data do you find useful, or are we missing something that you would find more useful for your role? And then KPIs. Is there a service area of particular interest that we're not capturing that you want us to consider for inclusion? This is generally a pretty standard set, and I've looked at some other municipalities and how they improve it with charts and visualizations, but broadly speaking, I think we cover most priority areas. And then resolutions. Is there a different level of detail you're after? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boranowski. Comments from council. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for the work done on this. I know it's been a long time coming to get to this stage, so happy to see it here. As to the questions around, how would I like to see this data sliced or differently? To be perfectly frank, I don't know yet. My initial reaction is, I think what we've been presented with is perfect, but I think that over time and going through this day, like seeing it more frequently, I'll be able to form a better opinion. We don't need to see this, or I'd like to see that, that sort of thing. So I guess all that to say, for now, I think it's probably, unless somebody else, and I'm sure other people might have other comments, but I think roll with it as is for a quarter or two or three, and just kind of get a feel for it. And then I think we'll be able to provide better insight.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas and Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm almost word to word echoing what Councillor Hamilton is saying. It's a great start, and I see your approach here, staff. Like you want to put in everything in there, and then we will kind of, as it evolves, it becomes a shorter list or a bigger list. Doesn't matter. And I also don't know how I will use it. In fact, I'll try to pose that question to you, CAO. Like, how do you envision this council to be using this dashboard? Like, I'm happy to hear that also.
Thank you. Credit really has to go to Ms. Jansen, Director Jansen, who did the lion's share of the work and conceived of the structure, both of the master document that we can use ongoing and of the dashboards and reports. So great work to her. I think of most value to council is quarterly, as you receive your financials and you look at your resolutions and you receive the dashboard, is looking at the highest priority projects. Are they ticking along? And do you want to take something out of what's coming next, or what is not a high priority project that's underway, to accelerate those? And I think that gives you a lever to pull to say, look, these are important to us and accelerating these is important to us. So we want to look in more detail at this portfolio or this slice to see what we might move down the ladder. The other thing is, as you consider having this quarterly, means you have a relatively fresh list. And as you consider requests or net new initiatives, you can reflect on this and say, okay, what does actually bring that new project into the organization mean for our priorities and the critical work and then the baseline work underway? And so you just have a better view into the organization. That's my thinking. Yeah.
Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, CAO, and thank you very much, Director Jansen. It's lovely to see you. Yeah, I have to echo what Councillor Hamilton said. And to be honest, more is more. So all the information I can get, I'm really happy to have. So I really appreciate the work that staff's done to bring this for us.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Amazing. I'm going to take it one step higher than these guys. I think it's amazing. Well done. No, I want to make it better. I want to make it better. Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. I think the resolution tracker is incredible. It must have taken hours and hours worth of work. So thank you very much. I like all of it, and I think that it's going to be an evolving sort of thing that's we're going to see. And I did have a question. Where will all this stuff live? Will it just be in our agenda packages, or will it be on a certain part of the website, or Let's Talk, or where?
Those are really good questions. For now, the agenda package at your quarterly financial update meetings. The backing tool and how we publish it, though, is something we need to consider.
That was Councillor Audia Kelly that asked that, right? Right. So we had discussed where these could live so that they could be quick, something that you could pull up quickly. Right now they are in the agenda package, but we were speaking about creating like a folder on iCompass where you can access that when you log in as a user. We haven't done that yet, but that's definitely an option. We haven't discussed what to put out publicly, like as a like on our website. We haven't discussed that yet, but certainly some opportunities to share some of the highlights.
Thank you, Director Jansen. Before you go, I very much appreciate Mr. Bornowski, the question he asked about what rolls up to the cover page, because and then maybe I'm stuck in some other model, but that's sort of how I picture a dashboard. There's maybe 5 categories on the front page of data that rolls up that we can sort of take in at a glance. And I very much appreciate all the work that's gone in the background here. But, and I also listening to other councillors' comments, I appreciate it'll probably take some time to refine what that cover page looks like. But now that you've got the systems all in place for collecting this data, it's not, is it a heavy lift to keep it populated or updated, or is it not, will now become fairly routine?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I believe it will become fairly routine, just connecting with directors, making sure that we're updating it through that process. Yeah, and then kicking out the reports. The intent originally was just to have those 2 dashboards that rolled up those data. So there was the all major projects, and then the council strategic plan projects, the 2 pages, and then all the other ones were just snapshots of how we can look at data. And we've also discussed how we use this internally as well. So there's different audiences. Some of it's pretty detailed and can be sliced out for managers versus the directors. So it's a work in progress, but certainly any feedback on what those top 2 dashboards look like is very welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I sort of see it, and as I say, I may be stuck in an old model, but like one sheet that has, I thought maybe a snapshot of major projects, a snapshot of finance versus budget, like where are we, performance versus budget, strat plan projects, an update, a general update on where they are, the KPIs that could potentially be seasonal, right? Like, you know, how are we doing in terms of kilometers of road plowed in the last 3 days, which, you know, those sorts of things. And then again, a snapshot of the resolution tracker, potentially not having given a whole lot of thought as to which resolutions would be on there, but then having all that other information in the background so that if something catches your eye, you can dig, you know, you can drill down into the supporting data and see. It's sort of my vision. I don't know if what other councillors think of that. Councillor Ramadas?
Almost similar, Your Worship, same as what you just said. I think for myself, in these 2 years, where I have often struggled is the agenda package comes to me and there are list of files that we are working through. I don't know where they fit in the strategic plan. So some kind of a call out where you are actually saying, hey, by the way, this file on, I don't know, roadworks or something, like this is where it falls in our strategic
Right,
plan.
yeah.
That kind of connection would be super helpful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And to Mr. Boranowski's point about a project appears, everybody thinks that's, you know, we'll say everybody at the council table, for example, thinks that's a great idea that allows us to look at the projects on the go and decide, is this such a good idea in terms of timing and where we fit it in, and you know, those sorts of, as a tool. So we're not making uninformed decisions in terms of slotting things into the work plans, and we're sensitive to what's already in the work plan and underway and maybe advancing well or struggling for other reasons, and that would inform our further decision making, if I'm making sense. Councillor Nixon?
Thank you, Worship. So just the one, you know, I look at this resolution tracker and I think it's just fantastic, like I said before. But I'm just wondering how hard would it be? Because a lot of the times if I get questioned by people in the public, I'd like to give them reference points or the discussion or the agenda package where it was decided. I'm just curious how hard it would be to put in a link to that exact agenda package. I mean, that would be, to me, that would be really good in that I could search this and then I could send that document to them, because I've spent hours looking for stuff as well. So
yeah. Well, and
So-
presumably, if I'm reading this correctly, Ms. Daniel, the date the resolution was made would be the appropriate agenda package.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so you could filter it based on date. We can't filter this one, of course, it's a PDF, but yeah. Councillor Ramirez.
I have one question, Your Worship. Maybe it is to Ms. Jansen or CAO. Like I don't have the exact reading in front of me, but there was certain sections where I saw priority 6 when I thought there were only 4 priorities. Like what is that?
You are correct, Councillor. The priority 6 means completed, and I think priority 0 is not started, just because we used a numerical value for sorting. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Council? I think ultimately what you're hearing is it's a great start, great bunch of data. It would be to Councillor Nixon's recent comment about searchability and being able to filter, like when we have access to it in a read-only format, so that we can, you know, it's usable in our role and reporting back to the community about when a decision was made and where it may be. So those sorts of details. And as I say, really just my personal preference, I suppose, some sort of cover sheet that gives us a snapshot of the key categories, so we can look at it and then drill down. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Jansen.
Yes, thank you. I will now ask for a mover and a seconder that council return to our regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Sue Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. This moves us on to item 7, an item arising from our last committee of the whole. Committee of the whole resolution CW 2429, November 19th, 2024, committee of the whole meeting. And the recommendation for review, the committee recommend council consider the request from the Elk Valley Family Society for funding from the city's affordable housing reserve at our next meeting, which is where we find ourselves. And Mr. Burdett, do you know the exact amount in that reserve? It was 63,000, I believe, or 66,000.
Yeah, it was 66,532.
Okay, thank you. And just look to Mr. Boranowski, this confirming that this is an affordable housing project, meets the definition.
That's correct. They are seeking a number of financing supports. It's led through BC Builds in partnership with BC Housing and the Elk Valley Family Society, and it does meet the threshold required for a CMHC intake as well, and they're pursuing that to try and get it across the line presently too.
Thank you. Thoughts around the council table? Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I'm happy to move forward, or I would put a resolution that we offer 65,000. So we still have some money left over. I know it's in the grand scheme of things, a bit of a pittance, but at least it keeps that account open and we can continue to add to it into the future.
Thank you. We have a motion, seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nixon. Discussion. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have given it a lot of thought. This particular thing, I will probably oppose this. And the reason is these guys are doing a great job. Phenomenal. Affordable housing is something that we all care about. I just think the timing is a little bit awkward, Your Worship. I would have been a little bit more comfortable if it was, in a different situation where our tax base was bigger. I understand there is not a big demand for this particular pool of money. There's only one proponent. There is not a queue out there. But I just feel like I have to wait and watch and make an informed decision at a better time. That time is not right now.
Mr. Burdett, how is the Affordable Housing Fund reserve populated? Where does the money come from?
That reserve was created, I think it was 2022. And at that time, during budget process, council had proposed and approved an extra 1% tax increase purely to fund this reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so now it's just like any other reserve, council can make a motion to use it for whatever. Well, I mean, in the bylaw, it says it's to be used for affordable housing projects, but. Right, and since 2022, we haven't put any additional into it.
Right, so it's sitting sort of static at the moment.
That's right.
And Mr. Boranowski, the Elk Valley Family Society, they are the primary proponent of this project. They're also I'm not sure whether I'd call them the managing proponent of the childcare and housing complex that is still in the works.
That's correct. I would call them one of the delivery partners.
Yeah, better phrasing. Thank you. Other comments?
If I could clarify,
yeah,
they received the BC Housing grant to fund 50% of that project, whereas through the city, we are managing the Education and Childcare New Spaces Fund portion of the grant, as it's a provincial pilot combining two different programs, trying to get one across the line.
Right. Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Can anyone recall when the last time we dipped into this fund was and for what?
I can't. I'm looking at Mr. Burdett.
At the time that we were considering the Max Turk sale, there was some de-risking and servicing done on some lots down there that was potentially going to be used for an affordable housing project.
Right.
So that was just under, I think, 20,000, which the starting balance of that reserve was 81. So that brought it to 61. And then it's been building interest the last couple of years.
Other comments from council? Councillor Nixon and Councillor Artie Kelly.
Thank you, Worship. We should just use the money. $66,000 sitting there. Use 65,000 of it. This is a great, society. They're doing great work. They're going to add to our tax base once this building is done. I think we spend it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, I was just pondering that because wasn't one of the asks for a tax exemption, property tax exemption?
Please, Mr. Boranowski.
That's correct. They had a number of requests. They had requests for DCC waivers, fee waivers, and property tax or permissive tax exemptions. Once the property is completed, the affordable housing units are likely to come in and then to be exempt from taxation. But you would have market and commercial that staff would likely not recommend consideration for exemption, although there's nothing stopping anybody from asking.
Fair. And I think that's an important consideration. There are market rents and commercial in this building, which I think is, sorry, you're looking around as though.
The only note I'd had a good discussion with Manager Similini and I think Bruce Lennox about the way in which BC Assessment will split roles to deal with one property and multiple different uses and multiple different taxation rates.
Mr. Burdick.
I can provide more context on that.
Thank
That
you.
lot was part of what the PTE bylaw a month ago that council approved. And yeah, as Mr. Boranowski says, as BC Assessment splits those lots, council will have to revisit each one of those lots to determine which ones are applicable for an exemption and which ones aren't. So
Right.
expect that to come back every year, I think, as part of the October PTE bylaw amendments.
And prior to now, it was a fire hall that was tax exempt anyway.
Right, because
Right.
it's a
It's a
city owned
municipal
property.
building.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I tend to support this. I think ultimately there's $66,000 in an affordable housing reserve. When we have a significant affordable housing project on the horizon is probably a good use of those funds. Otherwise, they'll just sit there stagnant and continue to sit there. Although I appreciate they may accumulate some interest over time, but I think it's an important project for our downtown and an important project for the community. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Well, I lean towards supporting this. I do have some misgivings. Firstly being, I don't think we've contributed to other affordable housing, have we? The second being, although this is earmarked specifically for this type of affordable housing, that's locked behind council bylaw, which I believe would be in our power to rescind and change and shuffle elsewhere should we desire. All that being said, on a purely pragmatic level, I think that we'll get more of what we encourage, and there will be a return on this should they be successful.
Thank you. Just to that comment in terms of those funds now are, we'll call it legally earmarked for affordable housing projects.
As it sits, but Councillor Shoesmith is correct. You could amend the reserve bylaw to get rid of that reserve altogether and then direct staff to put that those funds into another reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Artie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm not averse to supporting, but I'd like to hold some funds back. We have had situations come up. Example, we did use it to de-risk potential property that we had thought we could possibly use for multi-unit or affordable housing. There is a project for workforce housing that's also possibly going to come to us. And I actually was wondering, MRDT, CAO, can I prevail upon you to, I believe now that MRDT funds can also be used for affordable housing projects?
Through the mayor to council, that is correct. MRDT and OAP, so the Airbnb or online accommodator platform revenues are both taxation streams, and they are both eligible to be used for affordable housing. That needs to be within a formalized plan from the designated recipient. In that case, it's obviously Tourism Fernie. Council received and endorsed their strategic plan update earlier that sets out what their plans are in the future, but that does get an annual review. And so ongoing dialogue may be useful if your intent is to look to that organization or to those funds for support as well.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Yayo.
Yeah, and I would hesitate to not use these funds here in the off chance, one that employee housing or staff housing project goes ahead, because at this point, it's not even a project. It's a project to investigate the potential for employee housing being managed by the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm not sure employee housing would fall into the same bin as affordable housing. And I don't know if there's a legal definition that we'd have to consider, but it feels to me that at this juncture with this project this close to the horizon, I think they'd be ill-served if we didn't provide them with this funding to support the project advancing. And I'm supportive of Councillor Hamilton's motion. With that, I will ask Ms. Daniel if she's got the resolution.
That council provides $65,000 in funding from the Affordable Housing Reserve to the Elk Valley Family Society for the Affordable Housing Project at 692 3rd Avenue. I believe that captures Councillor Hamilton.
All those in favor? Myself, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Shoesmith, and Councillor Nixon. And those opposed? Councillor Ramirez and Councillor Roddy Kelly. Thank you. Good discussion. Don't think I've skipped anything here. Moving on to item 11.1. 2025 to 2029 financial plan, initial draft tax rate increase report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Burden. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mayor Milligan. Again, just a few slides on this report. And I want to start by clarifying for council what exactly the intent of this report is, because it is kind of a new report in our budget process. And it's really just to check in with council in the middle of our internal budget prep, provide a very high level update of where things are trending, which I've tried to frame in a draft tax rate increase. I also want to remind council of the budget guidelines that were approved by council on October 22nd, as those guidelines are currently driving staff's approach to compiling numbers for the 2025 budget. And then lastly, I'd like to share with council the graphs that were included as part of your package on the 20-year capital forecast and reserve health forecast. But again, back to the intent of this report, staff are not really asking for any specific direction from council tonight. Again, simply a mid-process check-in, sharing as much information as possible with council to maybe generate some additional discussion. If there is no discussion or additional direction tonight from council, staff will just keep progressing with budget prep as we have been up until this point. So very draft tax rate increase. When I wrote the report in your agenda, I put 7.8%. As of today, it's 7.5%. The reason for that change is I underestimated the revenue from new construction. And I'm really only pointing that out to make the point that this 7.5% still includes many estimates, because again, we're still early in the budget season. And at this point, we just have to make estimates because a lot of our numbers come from other places, other municipalities, regional district, insurance providers, benefit providers, BC assessment, RCMP, etc. I've listed the main reasons for this draft increase on this slide, which really are in line with what I mentioned in my earlier report. It's generally the major cost categories like wages, benefits, insurance. Also included in this 7.5% number is the 297,000. That was the remainder of the COVID restart fund that was used in 2024 to offset the increased costs at the pool, which was back to pre-pandemic service levels. But during the 2024 budget, council decided that using that fund wouldn't decrease the tax rate increase, and then we increased the contributions to reserves instead. So again, this 7.5% at the moment still has that additional 297,000 going into reserves. Council will probably notice that there isn't much detail tonight that I'm providing behind any of these numbers, and it's not so much intentional as it is just a reflection of where we're at in the process. Currently, we're still very much in meetings with all the departments. Finance is receiving spreadsheets and editing spreadsheets, asking questions, changing numbers, and so on. The more detailed budget presentations are still coming later in the budget process. This 7.5% does represent a lot of work to date, but there's still a lot of work to come before those detailed presentations are ready. Sorry.
Okay. Carry on, Mr. Burdett.
This slide is just a brief summary of the 10 budget guidelines, again, that council approved on October 22nd. I won't go through these individually, but should council wish to discuss the approach on any of these, we can certainly revisit these later. This slide is in your agenda package, and it's a graph of our projected overall reserve balances going forward. The green line that's in the negative is our forecasted year-end reserve total. Our current 20-year capital plan is populated from several sources, including the Asset Management Investment Plan, or AMIP, and the Integrated Infrastructure Capital Plan from 2017 and 2019, respectively. Also, other policies that speak to asset replacement, like our vehicle replacement policy. And so because some of these reports are 5 to 7 years old now, we did spend considerable amount of time making inflationary and reasonability adjustments to a lot of the numbers in those reports. And over the last couple of months, preparing and collating this data, a couple of obvious issues for me have come to light. One, it's that the green line, as you can see, hovers close to around negative $50 million about 10 years from now. And also that this exercise really highlighted where the gaps in our data is. So, for example, AMIP has really thorough data when it comes to like our utility assets, but when it comes to facilities, it really only has end of life replacement value. And that replacement value was really only based on our insurance replacement value at the time. So for example, the AMIP 2017 has fire hall replacement value as $2 million, which now we're seeing is not enough. And so, I think that means that green line that's a very conservative green line. It's probably quite a bit lower than it's showing there.
Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Or can you explain that last statement further? Are you suggesting that the deficit of our reserves is high in this line, that we're actually facing a bigger deficit to our reserves than is currently being shown?
Yes, I would say so. And the example I used was the fire hall being valued in AMIP at 2 million, and now our class E estimate is 20. I think it had the pool in there at 14 or 16 million or something like that. And I'm not sure you could build a pool for that much now either. So, and also for facilities, that was really just end of life replacement data. It doesn't have detailed information like a new roof or a new, and there were projects in the 2024 budget around facility assessments that we're still working through to get more data on capital project plan for facilities.
Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. Maybe I know the answer to this, but I just want to ask that green line shoots up because you're retiring assets, correct? And no?
No, that's another point I was going to make. The AMIP and ICP really only have 20 years worth of data. So starting there in 2036, 2037, we just don't have a plan longer than that. So that's been identified as something that we obviously need to work on as our asset management program progresses. But that's another area that we have a large gap in data that we've identified by going through this process.
So at that point, it's showing, sorry, just so I understand, showing the cost of replacement at zero, so any money we put in is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And I really tried to, we really tried to prepare this graph using our current data, like, because then we were just making estimates all over the place
Sure.
beyond that, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilor Ravenous?
Thanks, Your Worship. I think CFO is killing it one after the other. This is again really good information. Just putting it out there, what the tax increase right off the bat is an excellent move. I know there is a lot of estimates going into it, but I appreciate the intent behind this. This will keep the conversation more productive for the rest of our budget season here. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Councilor Schussman?
I've never been so alarmed by a happy green line that comes up before.
I'm just checking my notes because I feel like I went through most of them in those questions.
May I? CFO Burdett noted the facility assessments. We have, I believe it's 3 facility assessments two facility assessments this year for major fully leased facilities. There is a project for your consideration coming forward that will establish a larger data set that's much more comprehensive for your consideration later in the budget process.
And sorry, what do you mean by that? Larger than 2 facility?
Yeah, because we don't have facility assessments for
No.
any of our non-public facilities. All of our dashboards for our public facilities are out of date. So we need asset assessments and an asset management plan that we can then build into a program. I might be using those words not quite technically correctly, but
Right.
we need very solid assessments of our facilities to then layer into here to plan for the spending we need both on maintenance and replacing parts of those facilities until ultimate retirement or replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you. So $50 million, obviously not an easily solvable problem, especially when our only source of revenue is property tax. And I'm not bringing this number here tonight in an attempt to solve the problem. I'm only bringing it here just to continue talking about it. Sorry. Just to continue talking about it, like with council and the public, raise awareness around it. And it's not just the city of Fernie facing this problem. It's every municipality facing these challenges. But there are things that we're working on currently and in the past to help bridge this gap, including, so the graph on the prior slide assumes that we're paying for all of our capital projects with reserves, which is not the case. We apply for grants when they're available. Council can decide on what level of reserve contribution that they're comfortable with in this year's budget. I know Roslyn's council approved a 5% increase just for their operating budget, and then another 5% increase to reserves to help bridge this gap, as an example. I'll have more as we get later into budget for council to consider. And then it really forces us to look at how we prioritize our capital projects going forward. Potential service level changes are another way we can bridge this gap. And then again, this has been discussed at council before, but continued political advocacy to the province and the feds that municipalities really need additional stable funding sources outside of property tax. And so that's all I have. And it's a really short slideshow, but these are 2 huge topics. So I would love to, if council has any thoughts, hear those out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Councilor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just out of curiosity, this might be CAO and CFO, grant applications. I know our staff works really, really hard to procure those, but can you give us sort of just even a rough ballpark idea of what it costs us in terms of man hours, diversion from other projects? Is there any kind of like an even baseline? Because there is an opportunity cost, right? Every time we apply for a grant, because we don't necessarily always get them. And I sort of want people to understand that, yes, obviously grants are wonderful, but there is a cost to seeking them.
Thanks, Councillor Roddy Kelly. That's a really good question. And I'm not sure I can quantify it, but I would say a bigger problem outside of the cost is that we're doing it off the side of our desk is applying for these grants, you know, and we're not really, because there's so few of them, you don't become experts doing it that way at applying for grants. So well, there has been discussions internally about how to bridge that gap. You know, there are professional grant writers that take percentages if they're successful. That's an option that we've discussed but haven't really moved forward with. But
Further?
Yes, thanks, your worship. Yes, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the part of the opportunity cost too. Like if say engineer line is spending hours and hours and hours trying to procure a grant, then she's taken away from other things that she would like to be paying attention to. And then let's say we don't get the grant, you know? So I kind of want the public to understand that as well.
It is difficult because different granting streams have various different requirements. Some are very formal, some aren't. It's also really important to note that many grants require preliminary design. So you're also spending capital project dollars on design and cost estimation for projects that you don't know are going to be funded. So there's not just an opportunity cost of staff time, there's an opportunity cost of taxpayer money going to prepare for a grant from a different order of government. And there are external bodies that take a percentage, and then there are large municipalities who have professional grant writers or who are leveraging professional government relation firms or individuals and grant writers. And we are in competition with each other, unfortunately. So it's a challenge for small rural municipalities like Fernie to compete with a Richmond, Vancouver, New Westminster, Kelowna, right?
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. I'm really happy that we're having this conversation, and I'm going to pull out my little soapbox for once. I usually don't, but further to Councillor Audia Kelly's comments about grants, and I have to say that every time I've ever went anywhere that's offering grants, they already seem to know who our staff are and have been approached by them repeatedly. So good on you guys there. The golden rule applies. The one with the gold makes the rules. And I think it should be noted that when we, the city, are chasing around different organizations or other levels of government for money, money doesn't come just free. There's stipulations, there's requirements, there's ways that they grade us when they decide if we're getting the money. And so, you know, to a large extent, the policy becomes driven not by our taxpayer or by us or by our staff, but by the granting body. We do the things they want done with that money. That's my 2 cents. I don't know where we go with this municipally, just that I think the system is pretty bad that way. It really is. If we had the direct money or we had to beg our taxpayers for more, I think they would find us more responsive to them and less responsive to policy wonks in Victoria. Thanks.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. On page, it's 93, the table with the annual life cycle investments. I'm just trying to ascertain the numbers in there in the first table are for 2025 estimates. With the 6 million total, 4.8 million. So that's what our reserves would be for this budget cycle, or was that last budget cycle?
thanks, Councillor Hamilton. That table's from the 2017 AMIP, Asset Management Investment Plan. At that time, council had decided that they were going to use the scenario 2, which was increase life by 25%. And so that column is really the only applicable column, and that's supposed to be what our contributions to reserves are at. And we are below that still in 2024. So those are 2017 numbers that haven't been updated, and we're below.
Further?
And so then this current 7.5% increase factors in that full 4.8 contribution to reserves, or?
No, it keeps the reserves at the same level as last year, which includes the extra 297K also includes the 600K short-term loan payment that was decided in 2021, I think, to come out of reserves to pay for the short-term loan for the ops facility. So, and apologies, I don't know off the top of my head if that 600K gets us to this number, but I think even then we're a little short of this number.
And that 600,000, that's next year's the last year. Is that correct?
Yep, 2025 last year.
Thank you. Councilor Ramadas and Councilor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was about to just chime into what Councillor Shoesmith is saying. It's the economists have a term for that, rent seeking. That's what it is. You're just extracting out of this made up process that doesn't add value to the society. That's what you are getting to, I guess. I have a question, Your Worship. Is our ask here to approve of the 7.5%?
No, there's no resolution required this evening. This is just for information at this juncture. Councilor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask CFO, following further on His Worship's comment about the 600,000. Current taxation levels are allowing us to pay that 600,000. So if we were to maintain those, once we don't have the loan, we could conceivably, without additional tax, like maintaining the level we're at, put that 600 away?
Yes, and that, I think, that is what that was the intent of council in 2021, I think, for this just to be a temporary reduction of contribution to reserves to pay for this loan. And if you go back and look at 2017's or 2018, I guess, budget, I think you'll see that the contributions to reserves did equal this table. But then when it came time to actually pay for the ops facility, as if you watch Ms. Tynan's old budget presentations for 2021, she uncovered that, hey, you didn't actually have this money that was going into reserves. So then all the funding strategy came up and the $3 million loan. And so I don't think we've ever been contributing at this level, even dating back to then.
Councilor Hamlin.
Thank you. One thing that I would really like to see in the, I don't know when in the budget cycle it'll be, but at some point in this budget cycle is, and I know it's happened in the past, our reserve totals, but also a bit of a risk analysis on those totals versus what the infrastructure that they're there for. If we've got for 90% below our desired level in facilities, that's great. But if we're at 10% of what we need for water and wastewater, that's concerning. So, understanding, and again, we've got our reserve for the affordable housing. It's not a high risk situation, but just understanding where we are exposed to potential, I don't want to use the word, but I'll say it, catastrophic results if something were to fail critically and we don't have the funds in reserve. That will help me at least understand and be able to make a better decision around where that taxation level needs to sit in order to fund our reserves.
Thank you. Councilor Ramadas.
I think IICP already does that, Your Worship, to what Councillor Hamilton is saying. Again, like it doesn't aggregate everything together, but at least for critical assets, it just tells you, what type of reserves you need to have to support that ongoing infrastructure.
I realize that, but as we've just heard tonight and in this report, some of those assumptions of where our reserves need to be are clearly outdated. And so as staff is doing more research into this and getting a better handle of what our actual potential liabilities are, seeing some more updated numbers, I think will help inform the IICP and other plans.
Yeah, and potentially pulling it into one, again, dashboard that we can look at quickly. Mr. Burdett.
Yeah, and a great example of that is vehicles. You know, the ICP wouldn't have projected $2.6 million for a fire ladder truck, right?
No,
So
no.
that reserve's taking a big hit because of that.
Other comments from council? Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious if we could see the potential, what it would take to come up with these three scenarios. You know, the standard life, your life cycle, what it takes to, you know, get us to the second scenario and the first scenario, the tax increase that would be not as a shock value, but just as a, you know, this is what we need to do eventually. So something like that. Is that
Mr. Burdick?
Yeah, I made a note of that. My initial reaction is that might be a loaded exercise, but I'll certainly look into it and respond to you either way. I don't know what it takes to update that whole report off the top of my head, I guess, is all I'm considering right now sitting here. But I made a note.
Other questions, comments? Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to respond to Councillor Nixon here, if you wouldn't mind.
Respond to him?
Yeah, well, just wanted to kind of ask him a question, if you wouldn't mind. Probably.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
Councillor, at the end of the day, all these analysis, high, mid-level, all those things are great. But at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers who are going to pay the property taxes. So like it or not, that is our real constraint. It's not about how pristine the reserves are going to look like. I just wanted to make it clear there.
Yeah, well, we all have our perspectives on reserves and taxation, of course, and we all recognize that our primary source of funding is taxation. I don't think anybody around this table is naive about that. But it's, I just want to, and sorry, Councilor Hamilton, you had a comment?
I think my comment was going to be fairly much in the same vein to what you're saying. I think we do need this sort of information so that we as a body can make decisions, and so that the community knows what trade-offs we are facing that they might have to face. You know, do we keep our snow removal level at the same service standard, or do we start putting money away to replace the roads? Because at some point, it doesn't matter what the service standard of the snow removal is if there's no road surface underneath to remove snow from. So, like having these data points and this information is good for us, but it's also good for the community.
Yeah, and I think there is value in knowing, you know, and what those gaps would be in terms of where we're making those, to use your phrasing, trade-offs in terms of putting money into reserves versus maintaining our levels of service across the board, and you know, funding the reserves to the extent that we can. It's those are all important questions that we have to put before ourselves and consequently put before the public. Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Yeah, and further in that vein of yourself, Your Worship, and Councillor Hamilton, we have for the last couple of cycles talked about those levers that we could pull. And I think our CFO has outlined some of them, and then we haven't done that. So I would like us to, I really like all the work that CFO has done, and I very much appreciate it. And I would like us to take a look at some of those levers. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about, okay, what happens? How does the community feel if we wanted to say, I'm going to just throw out a number, have a 5% tax increase? What does that, where does that cost us? What are we going to lose by having that increase versus a 7.5? I'd like to get that more out into the open. And I think that's sort of what you're saying, Councillor Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. What the various trade-offs are. Yeah. Councillor Shoesmith and then Councillor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Thanks for bringing this report. I think it's pretty blunt. I think reality is staring us in the face here about the status of our infrastructure. And it's us and it's everywhere. I think we just have a better grasp of how dire it actually might be. Our challenge coming up is going to be justifying dealing with this or not and selling that to the townspeople. And I think that in that realm, it's important that we present City Hall as a lean, functioning entity. Because most people will understand when the taxes go up, when they see us working hard. And they can equate it with something real that we're doing. But if we don't appear that way and the taxes are going up, they don't see that and they won't bite. And we're gonna wind up having that fight back and forth to the detriment of our pipes, as I like to constantly talk about. Just catch all for infrastructure. And I think that's on us. We have to make sure that we give that impression to people. We show that, we live that. Like, we have to be careful and judicious and seen to be. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have to be able to speak to the level and quality of service that we do provide, and the sacrifices that we may need to make if we are bold and choose to. What depends, I'm not presupposing outcomes, but I guess the point is we have to be able to speak to those things ourselves as well, about the quality and level of service we provide, and the trade-offs again that we may need to make if we're not moving in a certain direction. Councilor Rowness.
Thank you, Worship. And continuing with where Councillor Rodia Kelly left there, also we got to be brave about many of these trade-offs too. And there are no holy curves anymore because the capital deficit is dire, the taxes are really high, and people are hurting. So we got to be really honest in our conversations and also be courageous what we are saying. If it means dropping service levels or even reducing headcount, everything should be on the table here. So we got to be clear about this because this is not pretty. We just cannot get in this unsustainable path that we have been in the last couple of years. And we have to find solutions rather quickly here.
Yeah, sadly, it's as we've already been discussed, it's us and every other municipality in this province is faced with the same difficult decisions every year because we don't have an alternate source of funding, and raising taxes all the time, it feels like an unwinnable scenario over time. And I want to echo the comments that have been made. Very much appreciate you bringing this blunt report at such an early stage where I think all of us have sweaty palms now as a result of this conversation initially. So yeah, and we're prepared for those hard conversations. So thanks for bringing it to us. Other comments? Councilor Rodia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just always what strikes me too is, okay, so we put, say, I'm just going to use fives. So we did a 5% tax increase in 2020. Then we did another one in 2021, which compounds on the 2021, and so on and so on. It's like that hair commercial where they told two friends and they told two friends, and it all compounds on each other, right? So it's not just this year 7.5, if that is the rate, but it's on top of those other increases that already happened. So like you can only squeeze something so hard and then it's going to run out of juice.
Councilor Rowness.
That compounding effect that Councillor Rodia Kelly is saying, 8% rate year on year over 8 years will be double the tax, just to give a context, right? So while comparison with other municipalities is not out of place, we just have to realize what our base is compared to someone else.
Any other comments? Councilor Hamilton.
The corollary to that math, though, is that if we don't increase incrementally year over year, we then end up with a significant increase when our infrastructure comes to end of life or whenever the service facility comes to end of life. So it is a trade-off. It is a fine line, and the math does work both ways, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Counselor Nixon and then Counselor Shu.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment, Councillor Shoesmith said townspeople, and when I think of townspeople, I think of pitchforks and torches. So let's try not to use that term anymore. You know, we've kicked the can down the road so many times, and we've seen it now with the community center, right? And we have a lot of really upset people with us because the council, being the continuing body, has kicked that can down the road. And I'd like to see it stop soon, right? Like, I mean, we can't pass this on to the next council and the council after that. So if we can get back on track, I mean, either that or we just, like Prince Rupert, you just no money to reserves and all into the maintenance, right? I don't know. It seems unsustainable, that's for sure.
Counselor Shoesmith, and then I think we'll move on. So
Thank you, Mayor.
Everybody's philosophical perspective.
I have a slightly happier point, if that helps. No, I was actually going to mention the community center. I think that's a taste of what's to come for a lot of places. But I would also like to say there's a flip side to that coin. We've managed, and not us, the town, not us, not council. The town has managed to be very creative with a solution here. And, those numbers that we come up with, there may be other solutions out there should we be clever and careful and work as a community.
Thank you. With that, thank you, Mr. Burdett. I appreciate the report. I can barely hold the paper now. This moves us along to item 11.2, curbside recycling program, agreement renewal. See how shaken I am? A report from our project engineer Line.
Hopefully I'll be able to speak a little bit better on the subject, but no promises. So I'm here tonight to talk about something that's actually a money saver, and I'm looking to council to talk about if we are going to renew this agreement or not. So at the end of this year, we will have been working with Recycle BC for curbside recycling for 1.5 years. And our current agreement ends at the end of this year. So I'm coming to you to talk about potential renewal. In advance of the existing contract expiry, Recycle BC polled their users this year to review the contracts, the program, and the incentives they provide. And with that information, there have been a few changes made to the program that would be reflected in the new contract. And the most interesting are that the contaminated materials allowed has increased from 3% to 5%. The curbside collection fees increased from $37.40 to $41 per household. And these are the fees that we actually give back to our customers. And they will undergo an annual CPI pricing adjustment from next year onwards. So previous to that, it was just $37.40 per year. The service administration fee rises from $3.50 to $3.75 per household, and the resident education fund increases from 75 cents to $1.25 per household per year. The city collects these funds and uses that budget to educate users and pay for promotional items for recycling. With the transition to Recycle BC, the community was able to put more recyclables in their curbside cart, which reduces the amount of waste heading to the landfill. And staff were also able to provide a small rebate to the community for the cost of collection, 89 cents per month in 2023 and 83 cents per month in 2024. And while limiting contamination in users' curbside carts has been more effort than initially estimated, staff are still working to create a clear and efficient strategy to deal with it. Even with that added management, staff believes the city should sign a renewal and offer the service for an additional 4 years the contract it stands for. as the current contract was only a year and a half long, it may take a longer time to reach and teach all community members. So staff do believe that partnering with Recycle BC, the benefits are enough to support the renewal of the agreement for this additional term. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Line. Questions from council? What is the impact of the our contamination rate? I think it was 15% on average. And does that affect our costs or the money we get back from Recycle BC?
If I may, it does not yet.
Okay.
So we did have a preliminary audit by Recycle BC, and then the letter came out mid winter last year that they did find 15% contamination. And we are working with Recycle BC to try and address that. And if over a certain time period, which depending on the situation, it depends on the community, they may start clawing back how much money they give us for recycling, but they have not said they're going to do that at this point. So this is our 1.5 years into the program.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Ms. Line, because I tried to look through the agreement and tried to find where it potentially talked about a clawback but it didn't appear in the agreement that I could find. And maybe I'm a naive agreement reader. It's a convoluted agreement, that's for sure.
If I may, there's two agreements that we
I
have to
know.
sign. So there is the statement of work and the master service agreement, and the statement of work includes those clawbacks, and it's
Okay.
in like Annex 2.4 or something back in there.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Other questions from council? Mr. Bornowski.
Thank you. And I might ask Engineer Line to explain a little bit further, but council will remember we updated our penalties for contamination and are just in the process of rolling out changes to enforcement. So we now have more opportunity to directly communicate with the specific households who are driving contamination, because each load of recycling, garbage and compost, they're viewed. And so our collection team tracks who and how recycling is being contaminated. And so that's just getting off the ground in terms of the enforcement portion, now that we've been leading with education. Anything to add to that?
yes, thank you so much. So as Mr. Bornowski was saying, we have a policy now that's in place for educating and further with contamination users. So we are going to start that this year. And the policy says that after 3 events of contamination, which we find by the collector dumps your bin into their hopper, they have a camera in the hopper, and then they can say, oh, I see glass. Oh, I see stuff bagged in plastic. They type it into their computer. They don't refuse the load at that point. They can't get it out of the hopper back into your bin. So it goes to the recycling, but they give us that information. And then we have a major spreadsheet that tracks all this, and like 98% of the contamination we're seeing is recycling in bags. But so our policy now says that after 3 events of contamination, we're going to send out letters to the owner by mail and put the letter in at the door. So if there's a renter, for example, then they both get notified. And after 4 additional contamination events that same year, we would start fining them for that 7th and further contamination event.
Pretty lenient. I mean, I'm not, it's not a criticism. People have plenty of opportunity to improve their behavior.
If I may, this is the first time we've had such a policy, so we can always start with more education and then reduce that if we want. So this year we are going to send out letters in early December and walk them around because of the strike. We can't mail anything,
Right.
But we won't be able to fine anyone because there's not enough collection periods left in the year. So the community that's contaminated will know, and then they will get a blank slate come January 1st.
Thank you. Councilor Remedios?
Thanks, Your Worship. I have a really global question here, not so much local. Like, where does all these things go? Like, do we know where they end up, or is it just scam?
If I may, I would suggest you go look at the Recycle BC website. It does detail where they sell all their products. So while I don't know off the top of my head, it should say there.
It does, and they're actually a bit of a global model. The user or the producer pay model. I wonder if we can get them here for a presentation to council. It would be, I know they presented to the regional district. It was very, very useful in terms of dispelling some myths, including the fact that 95% of the plastic that Recycle BC collects is actually recycled. It's not landfilled. And so they have, and I think I said this at our council town hall, they've actually presented across the continent in terms of their, the outputs of their program. It's pretty impressive.
I will follow up with my contact at Recycle BC and see
Thank you.
what's possible.
Don't create a whole bunch of extra work, but if there's an opportunity for them to reach out to maybe Ms. Daniel and our corporate officer and come and make a presentation, I think it would be useful, both to ourselves and to the community. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Engineer Line? With that, I will ask Ms. Daniel to read the resolution.
That council approve the renewal of a partnering agreement with Recycle BC for the provision of curbside recycling program as attached to this report, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the renewal agreement once public notification requirements have been met.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Line. We're now at item 11.3, but we're almost right at 8 o'clock, and I wondered if we could take a 5-minute recess at this juncture. Thank you. Places, people. Smiles, everyone, smiles. We're back on.
All right, I will be over there, but I will come back over here if it looks like a conversation you guys. need.
Okay, thank you. We're back. Thank you, everyone. And item 11.3, Fire Hall Project Next Steps, Delivery Methodology and Funding Strategy. A report from our Manager of Engineering, and welcome back, Manager Weir.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll just get my presentation up here. Okay, so we are here to discuss the Fire Hall project next steps with a recommended delivery methodology and funding strategy. So as you're aware, on September 10th, 2024 was the last report to council, and then council received a presentation detailing the outcomes of the public engagement, the site selection process, the technical assessments, the preliminary design and cost estimating work conducted over the past year. In the past month and a little bit, the project team has worked closely with Collier's project leaders to understand our project's risks and opportunities and develop a project delivery plan and schedule that address these identified risks. Collier's is a large independent advisory and project management specialist firm, and they provided 2 focused workshops about project delivery and the second about project scheduling and phasing. Their attached memo on tonight's staff report summarized our discussions and their recommendations for our project, including an overview of the procurement options considered, discussion on why the delivery methodology is important, rationale for the recommended method, and an analysis of our project's risks and opportunities. And so I'll just provide a summary of what we discussed and their recommendations. So project delivery models are selected based on their alignment with a project's objectives, the organization's familiarity with the model, project type, financial scale, schedule, complexity, and the risk tolerance of the organization. So choosing the most appropriate delivery model is fundamental to a project's success. So as an outcome of our analysis, supported by Collier's, the project team feels confident in recommending the fire hall be delivered utilizing a form of early contractor involvement through the progressive design build contract format. And I'll just review some of the main advantages of this project format for you. So the collaborative risk mitigation occurs in this format with the owner, designer, and contractor staff all working together to solve each other's problems, whether it's a design problem, construction problem, or owner stakeholder problem. The early contractor involvement mitigates some of the risk in the design, so reducing the risk can increase the competitive tension, meaning more high-performing contractors might be willing to bid since they don't need to fund a full design prior to bidding as they do in a typical design build contract. And the team can innovate together to lower the contractor's risk pricing. The contractor can review the design iterations, providing a perspective on items such as constructability or material supply that can actually shape the owner's requirements and the detailed design to make a project that has improved implementation and pricing. And the contractor and the designer bid on the job together, so they've already mutually agreed to work together, and therefore staff are not required to mediate as much between the two parties. Related to funding, the city can gain early cost transparency through open book estimation. So the project team has translated the owner's vision into a design solution to the point where the design builder is able to present their proposed cost schedules and informed assumptions around the project risks. And then the owner can take this opportunity to further negotiate with the design builder to alter the scope of work, timelines, or costs before officially awarding the final design build contract. And so progressive design build results in a more predictable cost outcome based on these collaborations and should have fewer surprises during construction, fewer design issues discovered during construction, and therefore higher construction.
Sorry, Ms. Ware. Councillor Ramirez.
I have a specific question, Your Worship. What exactly is open book estimation?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Ramadas. It is where the design builder actually shows all of their detailed spreadsheet of what their rates are and where they're building in their profit margins and where they're pricing their risk for the project and, you know, what each square foot costs, what every little part of the project costs. So you wouldn't typically see that level of detail in a traditional design build delivery method. You would just see the lump sum. So the open book means it's a level of transparency where they're sharing the detailed breakdown of their costs with you.
And that would include any contingency they built in. Thank you. Further?
Just a thought, Your Worship. I'm surprised it doesn't happen already. Like, why wouldn't we do this for our current regular projects would be my next question.
So we do see a detailed price breakdown on our municipal infrastructure projects, for example. They're typically contracted through a MMCD contract where they provide line by line, meter per or dollars per meter of sidewalk, dollars per ton of gravel imported. We do see that typically in our municipal construction. Facility construction is not typically run under that same master municipal construction format, and these emerging collaborative techniques are taking the place of traditional design build lump sum contracts where that information isn't available to the owner.
So sorry, just so I understand, like the MMCD contract, does it also sort of break out how they're pricing their risk, or do they typically add that? They would add that into, say, a linear foot of pipe. You wouldn't know
You're
what
correct.
that was.
They would add. You don't know where they've added it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. Was the City Works building design build open book as well?
No, it was a design build contract, lump sum. So the progressive design build has a phased nature that allows the city's funding strategy and constraints to work. So the first phase of the progressive design build contract is the pre-construction services contract, and it could run in tandem with the preparations for a referendum. And that work could be potentially funded from existing reserves. And then, although not a desirable situation, should the project not be funded, the contract format does provide an off-ramp whereby you're not legally required to enter into the phase 2 design build portion of you could, in theory, terminate your work and pay for the design work you completed and not continue with the work with that contractor. And then the development of the target price would take place as we progress through the preliminary and detailed design with the chosen progressive design build provider. And we would work through the design and see the refinement of pricing of what has been identified in the functional program layout and more detailed information on how and where we could control and reduce the price. And then the advantages of this methodology with respect to the timeline and outcomes of the project. Progressive design build uses existing procurement and contract tools that staff are familiar with, such as request for proposals and ultimately the CCDC design build contract, which is the second half of this work, which reduces the time to complete the procurement and leverages existing staff competencies. In this delivery methodology, the contract is converted into a lump sum and the contractor does earn more by delivering faster. So it does maintain some of the benefits of design build where we are striving for high productivity so that the contractor can increase their profit ultimately. And ultimately, these collaborative models have demonstrated positive project outcomes in terms of cost, schedule, quality, performance, and stakeholder expectations. So over the last month, the City of Fernie staff also met with the Municipal Financing Authority and to discuss the funding strategy and the different options available to the city. And this table is the same as the one that was in your report that summarizes the options. And as I touched on, in conjunction with the progressive design build project delivery method, staff would recommend using the current reserve balances from the Canada Community Building Fund and Facility Renovation Fund to fund the phase 1 pre-construction services contract portion of this work. And then it would allow staff to concurrently prepare for a referendum while advancing the facility design and refining the design and cost. And then once the funding is secured, those reserves would be paid back with the loan. And staff are recommending utilizing the option for temporary borrowing, as it will allow the city to take an advance on the long-term borrowing until the project is complete and the costs are finalized. It provides additional flexibility in the intake periods, which is also very helpful, allowing staff to initiate the borrowing process at any time in the year when the design and cost refinement has appropriately progressed, as opposed to trying to align that work exactly with the 2 annual intakes of the long-term borrowing. And then the short-term borrowing would be converted to long-term borrowing following the 5-year term.
Sorry, Ms. Weir, does the temporary borrowing, does it also go through the regional district?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So should council endorse using a progressive design build delivery methodology, the following steps are what would outline the project progression. So staff would issue an advanced procurement notice. This step notifies potential interested designers and contractors of the upcoming request for proposals for progressive design build services, and it allows them time to select a designer and contractor to mutually agree and prepare for the bid opportunity. And then staff would issue an RFP for pre-construction services. We would evaluate the proposals and return to council with a recommended proponent for award. And then we would complete the pre-construction services scope, which would include the design, cost estimating, scheduling, permitting, target price development, and risk management. And then next, staff would have already started, so sort of in parallel to that, but secure funding for the design finalization and construction, which is the part 2 of the contract, through borrowing, as discussed in the financial section of the report. And then staff are engaged with the Fire Hall Community Working Group, who are interested in the city's communication plans for a referendum and how they would support a successful outcome. Once funding was confirmed, staff would enter into that open book negotiation phase with the design build provider. And at this point, the design has progressed to a satisfactory level of detail where you're transferring the risk to the contractor and they're agreeing on a lump sum to build it for you. And so you would then move to awarding a regular design build contract, CCDC 14. And then once you've entered into that contract, you would finalize the design from approximately 70% design to 100% and begin construction. So the estimated schedule was shown in the report by Colliers, and it's based on their industry knowledge and experience with relevant projects. So as shown, what would be proposed for 2025 would be procurement of a progressive design contractor, working through the pre-construction services agreement and the undertaking of a referendum, with targeting converting to a lump sum CCDC contract in late 2025 or early 26, and then finalizing the design and construction in spring 2026. So the recommendation is that council direct staff to advance the fire hall project based on the project delivery methodology and next steps. And the project team is happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Manager Ware. Questions from council? I have a couple. And I know it's hard to predict, but what is your sense for in terms of how refined the cost would be in phase 1 before the off-ramp?
About 60 to 70% design, so
Okay.
pretty far
Pretty
progressed.
robust.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. If you'll bear with me, Engineer, where maybe I just wanted to make sure I've understood the progressive design. So we're agreeing on a price that has a built-in contingency. So is that the price regardless? Like if it comes in lower, the contractor keeps the profit, so to speak?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Audia Kelly. Yes, once you've agreed on a lump sum price, so the second half of the contract, the contractor would keep the profit. The opportunities for identifying cost savings collaboratively and addressing risks so that the contractor can decrease their price or adding and removing items, that all that work happens in phase one. And that's where you're coming to an agreement on what exactly it is that is going to be priced and built for the lump sum.
Further, Your
Further?
Worship? So, and then what about the flip scenario? What if it goes over the agreed on price?
The contractor eats into their profit and has to deliver what they've agreed to for that set price.
Once we're past the initial phase where we've agreed.
After we set the lump sum.
Unless there
After-
were, you know,
okay.
valid claims in some way,
Yeah.
that, you know, risks that weren't addressed or things that weren't mitigated. That's how classic design build contracts fail, is that, you know, project risks aren't fully understood, or there's material supply issues, or there's different things that delay or increase pricing, and the contractor makes claims to try to climb up the price of their contract.
Can you give us a percentage idea of how likely that is to happen?
No, sorry, I
No.
cannot.
Totally speculative. Yeah. And from the question maybe for our CAO, the report talks about the conversation with the regional district and how receptive have they been to the inflation, change in circumstance, et cetera.
I might ask Mr. Burda to add some color. I think generally receptive and appreciative that we aren't where we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 when we've considered a fire hall. Their point or their point of questions have actually been quite good to ponder, being, are we talking about a single lump sum payment, or does it actually make sense for a manageable, what might be a more manageable process of a contribution that is proportional to a debt repayment over the full term of a loan? And so are they then able to phase their payment to the city of Fernie for the capital asset over the term of its financing rather than paying a whole chunk up front? Because obviously they have to consider as a board, or staff have to consider what they can recommend to the board, and the board will have to consider how they assess for those funds.
Yeah, as a creation of a service for the, or enhancement for the service, I guess. Mr.
Yeah,
Burda?
the only thing I would add is obviously they have their own approval process with their board, so it's not as simple as just amending the agreement.
No.
So it takes time, but I agree with Mr. Bornowski. They were very receptive so far to the reasonability of the notional cost of one bay no longer being 450,000.
Okay, thank you. And then a related question, the Collier's memo talks about Fernie's population at 10,000. Is that the catchment for the fire hall? Is that, what is that meant to illustrate?
I don't know. Can I defer to Chief? Do we have a number on the service area? I don't have that
Okay.
available at the moment, but I
Thank
could
you.
get that back to you.
Yeah, I'd be just curious why they would peg it there. It's certainly not our census population, but it's how they arrived at that figure. I'd be curious to know it. Potentially, yeah. And this is a question I expect, and not for you, Manager Weir, I expect for Mr. Bornowski, that I think I probably know the answer to. So the recent federal infrastructure grant that is focused on infrastructure that will increase housing, it wouldn't apply to a fire hall. if our current substandard situation were such that it was potentially inhibiting housing. It's a bit of a flyer.
My understanding is that it absolutely would not.
I suspect it is.
It's you know, pipes and facilities and processing and treatment
I
and
figured as much, yeah. I thought I'd ask the question though.
you may be able to write a really compelling application, but I think you need a lot of horsepower to kludge it in there.
Yeah, fair enough. Other questions from council? Seeing none, I will ask Ms. Daniel to read the recommendation.
That council directs staff to advance the fire hall project based on the recommended project delivery method and next steps contained in this report.
Mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? Councillor Reminis?
Thanks, Your Worship. I think the model that was shown to us and all the work that the staff has done is pretty good. It's a reasonable approach. Don't have any major questions or lack of understanding of the delivery framework itself. However, I'll still oppose this vote, Your Worship, just because I don't think we can afford it. When I put a motion on floor a couple of months ago for $12 million cap, that got rejected. I don't think my stance has changed very much since then. We still need a fire hall, an operating fire hall. But unfortunately, this is a big commitment. And I'm just worried that once we commit ourselves, first step, there is no coming back. And hence I'll oppose this motion on the floor.
Yeah, well, I hardly disagree with your comment that once we set our foot down this path, we're committed, because we've just heard that at the end of phase one, we have an opportunity to, without obligation, to withdraw from the process and table the entire project. If it isn't, if something arises that we haven't foreseen.
So, Your Worship, isn't that costless also? Like it costs us money, doesn't it? Even to get to that first, that's
sure.
what, $1.5 million? Is that, did I read that number right? Something like that. Anyway, it's just that there is no costless solution here. It's unfortunate that we are in a situation like this. I just wish we were in a better situation for me to fully endorse this.
Councillor Hamilton?
I believe 6 years ago when I first was elected, this project would have been about 5 million. But through successive decisions, concerns about the cost, kicking the can down the road, we're now in this situation. And to be perfectly frank, I'm sitting here scratching my head, wondering how we can think that not moving forward is going to save us money.
Councillor Reminis?
It's again the trade-offs, Your Worship. It's C&L line. Last council presentation, we just came to know that half of our water is leaking. Like it's other core infrastructure issues where we will be forced to borrow money. And once we commit to this, there won't be any opportunity to address those other infrastructure issues too. So yeah, I wish it was a better situation, but we are not. We are not in that better situation right now.
Other comments from council? Councillor Nixon and Councillor Schussman.
Thank you, Your Worship. We need a fire hall, period. And we need it like soon. I'm always cognizant of the fire underwriter survey. We're all going to end up paying more in insurance if we avoid this and we continue on with this temporary fire hall. Our firefighters deserve a fire hall. Our community deserves a fire hall. We need this for everybody. We have 16 auxiliary. We normally have 25. Morale is low. We have to have this. So those are my comments. I'm in favor of this 100%.
Counselor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. If I may have a moment to collect my thoughts. So should we approve this here tonight? We'll spend some money and some more time, and then perhaps it'll go to referendum, but not necessarily, depending what those options are. I would add that if it doesn't, I suspect that that'll be it for us at this table. Townspeople fully expect that there would be a referendum. And should it go that way and then lose, I feel we will be doing the town and our firemen a disservice. I feel that should we vote this down here tonight, we will stall things and waste time. And I think it'll come back and pass and just happen later. I do feel this needs to go to a referendum. I'm most definitely on the fence about this. I feel we do need a fire hall. I also feel we might be overreaching. I'm afraid we overreach. And as my fellow councilman just alluded to, should we do that, we might find ourselves in a worse predicament later. I'm highly conflicted is the wrong word, but I have a lot of tension between voting for or against this project delivery here. I think that the sooner we make a decision, the better, but should we wind up not taking this to referendum, I think that'll be a betrayal of the commitment to openness and being responsive to the people.
And just for clarity, when you say not taking it to referendum, there is an option, you're referring to the option
Yes.
that were it to come in below 14 million and change, we could do that. I don't think anyone at this table has any intention of doing that.
No, but I would add, Mayor Milligan, that if that were to happen and then we would go over that, we wouldn't find that out till far later. It would be a die is already cast thing. The avalanche is already going.
Understood. Councillor Arnott.
Thanks, Your Worship. And Councillor Shoesmith, if you do vote yes tonight, you're still committing to spending that $1 million or $1.5 million to get through to the first step. It's not free. Let me remind you that.
Thank you, Councillor Amadas. Absolutely.
Yeah, and my position on this hasn't changed. I think ultimately, and Councillor Nixon has touched on it, this is a project that has been kicked down the road since 1979 when our firemen were moved into a repurposed Firestone tire shop. I personally think that's unforgivable, that we've kicked it down the road this long and we're still considering kicking it down the road. I accept that we have other infrastructure issues and we've had for many years, but at the same time, our firemen deserve, our community deserves a functional needs-based fire hall that serves the needs and safety of our community. And we're at risk of absolutely gutting our fire service because we can't keep auxiliaries because of the nature of the temporary situation we're in now. None of these things, whether it's pipes, whether it's water treatment, none of them are getting cheaper. And so in my mind, now is the time to move and to make this decision and keep this project moving forward. The community will ultimately decide whether we're going to build a fire hall or not. But I want to get to a point where we're putting the best designed and thought out project before them so that they can make a thorough and informed decision. So I'm fully in favor of advancing this. Councillor Shoesmith.
For clarity and for those watching, a split vote is a failure, correct? If it's a tie, am I correct in saying that?
That's correct, yeah.
So were it to be voted down here tonight, we would be pursuing option 2, which is direct staff otherwise. I suspect that would involve quite a lot of discombobulation and consternation in the organization. But ultimately, I feel it would come back before us in the same form or similar for another vote. And I'm not a fan of wasting time. For those reasons, I'll probably be voting in favor here just to advance this to the point where the townspeople can yay or nay, and to not waste time, which is also money. I think we'll be spending that money in any case.
Councillor Rounds?
Just to be clear, Your Worship, it's not like anybody who votes no here is somehow anti-fire persons, or we don't worry about the community safety.
No, nobody's
Well,
said
I
that.
just wanted to say that out loud, just to be clear. Yeah, it shouldn't be portrayed as a false trade-off here. We are also committed to community safety. In fact, the reason why I voted yes for the site location was exactly for that particular reason. And back to the FUS point that Councillor Nixon made a couple of minutes ago, there's no data. Till now, we just cannot quantify that. And I'm sure the staff has done a lot of work to figure out what it is, but I just don't have those numbers in front of me. The original reasoning I had when I voted yes for that for fire hall was I thought that there would be some kind of an indirect tax because of extra insurance costs that the taxpayers would bear. But to this date, I just don't know what that is. So we are really basing our decisions on incomplete information. All we know is this particular facility is going to cost a lot of money. It'll involve borrowing. And once we commit to this, it'll crowd out every other investments that we might be doing in the future. So yes, anyway, I just want to make it clear, like nobody here who votes no here is anti-fire persons or not worried about community safety.
I appreciate that perspective. Nobody has made that suggestion. In fact, as I framed my remarks, I framed them as my personal perspective. And I stand by them. And as such, I stand by my support of this resolution. And with that, I'll ask Ms. Daniel to read the resolution, please.
Yes, so the resolution is that council directs staff to advance the fire hall project based on the recommended project delivery method and next steps contained in this report.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Oh, sorry. Oh, I apologize. Oh, okay. All those in favor? Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Nixon, and myself. All those opposed? And understanding that a non-vote is a vote in favor. Understood. Thank you. That passes. Thank you for that. A good conversation as always. Item 15, reports from council. I will start with Councillor Shoesmith.
Ooh, let me change gears.
Surprise.
Can you talk about a green line?
I'll have nightmares about that green line. Not a ton to report. Sure, there's a bunch that happened. It just doesn't come to mind right now.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I went to my first ArtStation board meeting, and I was very happy to be sitting in their new cabin room, where the quilters will be taking over in there, as well as other programs. They had a lack of quilters being able to go up the stairs, and now they're returning to the fold. So that's they're one of the first groups that were at the ArtStation, so that's a bonus. I want to congratulate the Fernie Secondary School junior volleyball team on their win at provincials. Amazing results for that group of young girls. I attended the BBB at the museum, and I tried to, which was unsuccessful, to purchase some of the art from their online auction. People just outbid me. I tried my hardest and I lost. So also, you had mentioned this in your preamble, Mayor Milligan, Fernie Fire and Emergency Services tomorrow night, 4:30 to 8:30. And if you don't have a chance to get out there, drop some stuff off at the Salvation Army. So, and also this week, Friday night, it's a very busy week in Fernie. So Friday night, holiday kickoff for the chain.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. So a few things. I attended, is it my second or third meeting with Fernie Tourism. I did send you all an email to take a look at. So I just wanted to give some of the highlights and some of the things that have happened there. So tourism has committed to execute a $50,000 worth of funding to exploring a future needs related to sport and recreation. So there is a proposal from the proponent that they have hired that I did send to all of you, and I'll talk to Meredith about sharing that more broadly so that everyone can be aware of it. They also the shuttle will be starting up, which we all know. They tourism has invested 68,000 of its funds to support and manage that service, and the overall winter season shuttle cost operates about 153,000. So folks know that, and some remaining funds are going to come from ticket sales, partners, and advertisers. And there's going to be a new app, which is pretty cool, that's going to be launched this week. That's going to sell shuttle tickets, and it'll show the route and the schedule and have a driver GPS tracking system. So
nice.
It's getting pretty sophisticated, hey? And then just to give you a little bit of, because I didn't get to give this previously, but summer and fall, there was quite a lot of stuff that tourism did. So they've worked with various partners and funders under the RDEK Area A Sustainable Tourism Strategy. And so some of the things that were accomplished were the Morrissey Boat Launch construction, River Road and Coal Creek RAD parking lot improvements, sign kiosks, picnic tables, sign kiosks at the Olson Pit and the Hosmer River access, some parking expansion, sign kiosk and second toilet at Silver Springs, a new sign kiosk at Dogwood Park, sign development for Heiko's access and trailhead, and then the third season of Ambassador Wild. So they have been very busy, industrious folks at tourism. They're on it. They're very they're a great association with lots of energy over there. I'd like to be able to duplicate it. I also wanted to extend congrats to the grade 10 volleyball team. That was pretty amazing. I went to the BBB at the museum, Business Banter and Beer, for those that may not know that. And it was really bittersweet to see Mr. Foran was a teacher and guidance counselor of ours, Mayor Milligan, I think still circa your era too. So it was great to see their art, very much appreciated it. Went to a booked at the library. Emma and her staff are just amazing for all they do for this community. I can't reiterate that enough. And it was very lovely. Our local celebrated author, Angie Abdu, interviewed Tim Taylor. So it was great. Got a chance to get his autograph on my new book. And I wanted to actually talk a little bit about my wish list to have a business banter and budget this year, in hopes of enticing more of the public to maybe come out and see our budget slides that our staff works really, really hard on, and maybe some of the contentious things, and you'll see what it is like to have some of the trade-offs. So I'd like to talk a little bit more to staff about that. And I think, oh, there is one other small thing. I have been talking to some of our athletic groups in the community, and they miss the Leisure Services Advisory Board, and they understand that there is a group, there is a stakeholder board that meets but they would like some kind of interaction, and council liaison is maybe not the appropriate thing because they're not community partners, where we do have liaisons, but I was asked if there would be any potential to revisit reforming the Leisure Services Advisory Board, which, if for the folks that may not have known that, was community members working with city staff and making recommendations to council based on presentations and asks from other community members. So very grassroots. So just putting that out there. And thanks, your worship.
Thank you. That's a very thorough list. Appreciate it. Councillor Ramdas.
I can't match that, your worship. I'm just looking forward. I will be at the board meeting for the chamber on Thursday. Looking forward to that, and again appreciate yourself and the colleagues nominating me on the board. So looking forward to
Thanks
that conversation with that group.
Thanks for taking it on. Councillor Hamilton.
Save the best for last, did we?
No, I'm last.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, save the best for last. Not a huge amount to report. I missed in my last council report mentioning the opening of the Tanaha creation story on the fencing along the BC Hydro site where NUPQ is currently located. Some fantastic art and creation story on some placards along the fence telling the Tanaha creation story. Highly recommend stopping and checking it out. Also attended the council cafe on Monday. Trying to think, was it this Monday or last Monday? That was last Monday. As well as library board meeting. One of the new things I learned at the last board meeting was some of the stuff that they have in their tech hub that is available for free, kind of a library of things available to the community to borrow. The notes that I made for myself as a reminder to go check out was their radon detector and CO2 detector, to go and borrow that and place it in my basement in my home to just ensure safety, since that's where I work most days now. They also have a number of events coming up, Christmas by the Book. Carl Subban, who is the father of PK Subban and a number of other professional hockey players, is coming to do a booked reading. And one number that really jumped out at me that I believe Emma may have mentioned last week at committee of the whole, but bears repeating. Their Wednesday at the library sees over 400 people every Wednesday. The number I have written down is 446 at the previous Wednesday. So, to what Councillor Adia Kelly was mentioning about just the fantastic services that facility brings, it's incredible to hear how many people are served by that service.
Thank you. I'll touch on a couple of things that have already been touched on. Appreciate Councillor Nixon bringing up the Chamber's holiday kickoff. Downtown holiday kickoff is this Friday with fireworks at the art station. Please check the Chamber website for all the stuff that's going on that day. Council Cafe this coming Monday, December 2nd. Looking at Ms. Rhodes to get the word out there. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed the business beer and banter at the museum as well. And like Councillor Nixon bid on some of the art and was scooped completely, skunked. But I was amazed, one, at the quality and the size of those canvases and the cost, the price they went for. I bid on one that was 51 inches on one side and went for $280, and it was fantastic. So it's kudos to the museum for both recognizing the foreigners and for that art auction. Here in this facility on December 12th, the Rotary is hosting their Christmas seniors lunch, and I'm looking around the table at council if you're available. I've served at that, acted as a waiter at that luncheon for the past few years, even before I was in office, and I've really enjoyed it. It's a really great event, so I would encourage everybody to participate if they can. Sorry? December 12th. And unfortunately, I'm an RDK, so I can't participate this year, which is, thank you, Councillor Audie Kelly. And I have a date written down here, and I can't remember what I wrote it down. Sorry. Oh, that's right. So like many of you, I'm now the council liaison with the Fernie Trails Alliance, and I'm attending their strategic planning, second part of their strategic planning session the evening of December 4th. And recently I was able to attend the Gakin open house. Gakin, for those who don't know, is the economic arm of Yakutat and Nucleate community, and they have set up a business venture in Sparwood. And it is quite an ecosystem of businesses they're building there, including water treatment and all sorts of things. So it was a really an excellent event. So with that, I will thank everyone and thank everyone for attending this evening, and thank you as always for the frank and open conversations that we have. And with that, we are adjourned.